Hi everyone, thank you for coming out to the webinar on piping schematics and 3D modeling in 3DEXPERIENCE CATIA. So initially I started thinking about what to cover in this session, and I wanted to show flexible tubing, rigid tubes, piping, but the deeper I got into how everything worked, the more I had to scale back to what I needed to show in 45 minutes. So we're going to start off with an introduction, then go through the logical setup with the tables, specifications, symbols, catalogs, and schematics. Then moved into the physical setup, and guess what? More tables. Then go through more catalogs on the 3D side, pipes, elbows, and equipment, and then put it all together by routing pipes. So a little bit about me. I'm Steve Darcey, received my mechanical engineering degree from UALR, and for the past 12 years, been working and living in Austin, Texas region for GoEngineer as an elite applications engineer. I like robotics, automation, technology. I run a little bit just to stay in shape. And I also like computers, software, 3D printing, or anything very techy and nerdy. So on to the introduction to piping system design. So CATIA does something a little bit creative in that they're capturing the requirement, functional, logical, and physical aspects of the entire system. And we call that RFLP for short. For the most part, we're just going to stick with the logical and physical part of the model. Here you can see the logical and physical models. You can create links between the schematic symbols and 3D parts for a seamless integration. So let's start with the logical side. Tables, and they're just that. A list of data to reuse over and over again. And because some tables need to be integrated into other tables, we'll need to create links to those other tables. Here you can see that the pipe reference dimension table is linked to the other subtables and subtables. So let's look at a demo on creating a simple standards table. So all we have to do is go into CATIA and we'll start some new content. Let's go ahead and set our attributes at creation for all types. So a little setting there. And then we're just going to scroll down till we find our standards table. There we go. And then we'll just rename it, and I'll just put COE standards table and hit OK. And then we need to add some rows. So I'll put a bunch of rows in there. And then we'll add, just type in some text for ANSI, ASME, DIN, ISO, and anything else that you want to put in there. So that's it. It's just a simple table. And of course, once you're done, make sure you go over here and hit the save button. So it saves it up to the cloud. Next, we're going to go ahead and add a standards table to the data setup. So we need to change our responsibility to owner. And then we need to just run the data setup app. And I've created a favorite for that. All right, so you see my CATIA collaborative space. And I'm just going to scroll down. You can see I haven't set up many of these at all. So it's kind of like starting from scratch. And we're going to go under the piping tubing specification. And we're just going to create a new one. So it's going to create a new resource set. So we'll just rename it, hit OK. And then we can have all of these tables that we set for specific standards and things like that. So we're going to set the standard table. So I'm just going to search for the co-standard table. And so now anytime that it asks for a standard, it's going to give me that list in a drop down. So I do need to add this to our collaborative space. So you just drag and drop it in there and then make sure you save it. And then now it's going to be accessible for everybody that's using that collaborative space. All right. And last thing, don't forget to change back to the leader role before you start doing more modeling or table setup. And next we're going to make a nominal size table. So we're going to just pick that from the list right there. And you'll notice on the properties for this, we now have the standards drop down, which is of course coming from that standards table. And then let's just go add some rows. So we'll just hit the plus sign a couple times. And then this again is just a table. So we're just going to manually type in any of that information there. All right, and once we're done, so you can see I've put a whole bunch of them in there. I'm a super fast typer. And of course, make sure you hit the save button when you're done. And then we need to do this for some of the other different types of tables. So here's another one for parts behavior. So this is a customer table, and we're just going to rename that. And again, we've got the little standards drop down. So we'll create a new table. And we'll add a new column. So a little bit different. And we can also move them to the left and right, kind of organize them, add a couple rows, and then type them in as well. So that'll be from my logical branch, miscellaneous one. The logical is all the symbol stuff. So one for a reducer and one for a valve. And then of course save it. And we're good to go. Let's do one more. This is going to be the parts subtype table. So same startup. I'm going to just rename it, pick a standard, hit OK. This one's going to be a little bit different just because we're going to add the behavior table to the drop down on this one. So again, we can have tables with subtables with subtables. And so we'll add a couple records in here. And then let's go ahead and the first part of this, the part subtype, we're just going to type it in. And then for the behavior class, you just double click on that and we get a little drop down. It's going to make that a little bit bigger. That looks better. And then of course, put more text, have a little drop down, put more text, have a little drop down, and keep on doing that till we're totally done. And then save the table. And then once it's saved, then of course we can use this table and another table if necessary. All right, here we're going to make two tables. We're going to start off with the fluid category table. Pick the standard, hit OK. And then we'll add some rows. So 3 simple fluid categories, gas, water, and petroleum. Then we'll save that. All right, and then real quickly, we'll just do another table. This one's going to be the fluid table. Again, we'll pick the standard, hit OK. And notice that the fluid table automatically has a column for the fluid category. So we do need to, it's got the little link that's messed up, so we just need to fix it and tell it, hey, there it is, the table. Now the link is happy, so we'll add a couple rows. We'll put air in there, atmospheric. And then for the fluid category, we can just pick on gas. And then we could add the density. And then of course, rinse and repeat. Add a couple more rows, change the fluid. This time we'll put diesel oil, and the fluid category we'll put petroleum, and then of course change the density for that. And then we'll do that again and again and again until we have an entire list. And then once you do that, of course, make sure you save it. All right, now that we have those tables, let's go back to the data setup. And to do that, we need to change the owner responsibility. And then we'll start up the data setup app. And to make it easier to find this, I'm going to pre-select it. So now when I scroll down, you'll see it's going to be highlighted. So that's pretty easy. And then we're just going to go edit that specification resource. And we'll scroll down here and notice we've got some things like the logical part subtype. So we've got a table for that now. So I'm just going to do a search. I've renamed everything COE. And so I just select on that table, and now it's applied to that logical part subtype. So we'll do the same thing for the fluid. And notice it's looking for a specific fluid table. And then I've also got one for the nominal size. That was all the 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch nominal pipe sizing. That looks pretty good. And then that's it. It's already applied to the CATIA collaborative space, so all I'd have to do is save that. And then that's it. Close out of the data setup. And again, make sure that you switch from the owner responsibility to the leader. And now I'm ready to get back to work. All right, now that wasn't all of the tables, but that was all the ones that we're going to cover here for the sake of time. So now let's dig into the logical setup for specification symbols catalog and the schematics. So next we're going to start a new piping specification. So we'll scroll down and find that. And then we're just going to add COE to the beginning of everything, just to kind of keep it specific. All right, and then of course on the standards drop down we can pick that. Now we have fluid category, so I can hit the little drop down, pick on that, and of course we have the fluid. So that makes it easy. So we'll just hit OK, and it's going to create that specification. And then we're going to add these tables to the specification, so we're just going to right click copy and paste the specification, and now they're available over on the right. Then of course make sure you hit the save. Here's an easier way to see it in this little tab, where we can see all the tables, and if I need to edit or change them, it makes it a lot easier now that they're added to this specification. And now that we've got the tables out of the way, let's go ahead and start with a symbols library. So we'll just click on that and rename it and hit OK. All right, next we're going to expand our little tree over here, and let's squish that in, and you can see the little symbols library. I'm going to double click that so you can see the symbol reference. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this feature. So the symbol, we're going to call this the valve, and we'll just apply an OK. Next I want to make sure that I'm snapping to the grid, so make sure that's turned on. And then I'm just going to go get the polyline command and draw a little valve symbol in here. So we'll just make it nice and simple. All right, now that we have the symbol, we need to add some ports. So I'm just going to pick on the little point there. And once you pick the midpoint, I need to pick the direction. So make sure you hit the little arrow pointing the direction that the line is going to go out towards. And you can see when I select it, it's got the arrow and that indicating the direction, and it's got a little lock on there saying that it's anchored. All right, we're going to make a new symbol. We'll call it a reducer. So you'll see over on the left in the tree, we have a valve and a reducer. So same type of thing. We'll grab polyline, and we'll just draw out a little quick symbol. Pretty easy. And then we need to add some connection points as well. And make sure, again, you have the direction on there. All right, that looks pretty good. And then we hit the save button. So next we'll be making a piping logical valve. So let's scroll down and select on that. So we'll rename that. And we'll give it a subtype. So I'll drop that down. So it's again coming from the table. And I need to change the piping tubing system design app. So I'm just going to search for system and then select on that. That way I've got the right toolbars. And we're going to insert symbol representation. And we'll put it underneath the co-piping logical valve, and then go ahead and type it in. And I'll just double click on that. And again, we're going to create a line. This one, I'm not using the polyline command. I'm going to do some trimming on it. So I'm going to just use the line command. Polyline command doesn't trim very well. So we'll just draw a circle out there in the middle. Then we'll go get our trim tool, and we'll trim it about the circle and keep going all the way around until we got our logical symbol there. All right, then we're going to create a logical port. So just kind of like the connector, we're going to pick on that. We'll go ahead and rename it. and tell it whether it's in or out or whether it's bidirectional. And I didn't specify a size because I'll be able to use this symbol for multiple sizes there. So there it is. So kind of do the same thing. And we're saying no system type on that dialog, and then pick the direction, and we're done. Now you can see I've kind of messed this one up. I kind of did that on purpose so you can see the tools. So we got to unanchor it, then we just drag it to where we want, and then I usually anchor it again. And then of course, once it's in the right location and everything looks good, go ahead and save it, and we're good to go. Now that we have our logical valve, I'm going to insert a logical reducer. So we'll pick on that and rename it. Pick our subtype, hit OK. And I'm going to do this one a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and create a logical port and then just pick on that logical reducer and then tell it it's the port. And again, this is a reducer, so it's bidirectional, and I'm not specifying a system type on this yet. All right, so you can kind of see my ports underneath here, even though I don't have any geometry yet. So I'm going to go ahead and create another logical port, just because reducer has kind of a left and a right side. All right, then I'm going to do insert symbol representation. And of course, tell it it's a reducer. So now I have the symbol, but there's no geometry to it. So I'm just going to double click on that. Now I've already created a reducer in the symbols library. So I'm just going to browse for that. Open him up. I probably should have left him open from before. Let me zoom out a little bit. So there's my reducer. I like to look at them in this view there. And then I'm just going to say add an existing symbol in this session, and then go to that and select on that reducer. So now it's going to insert that as my schematic symbol there. All right, then we're going to do port mapping. I have connection points from the symbol, and I have ports, and so now I'm just going to map those over. So there's the port on the right. Now we'll do one to the left. And that's it. Make sure you save it. Now that we have those done, let's go ahead and create a catalog, symbols catalog. So I'll pick on the catalog and we'll just rename it. And hit OK. All right, then we're just going to right click and do insert chapter. And I'm just going to name this equipment and hit OK. And now you'll see we've got kind of like a folder. They call them categories, so we can put stuff in there. Whenever you do this, make sure that you right click on the catalog that you want it in. In this case, I want this under the top level, so I picked on the top level of the hydraulic diagram catalog and then renamed it tubing parts. And then there we go, we've got another one in there. All right, this one I'm going to pick on it and then hit on the COE hydraulic diagram catalog. And we'll call this annotation templates. So a little bit different way to do the same thing. So now I've got 3 of them. I'm going to make one underneath tubing parts. So again, right click on tubing parts and then say insert existing object. And then we're going to go browse to our logical part. Give that a second. And then now we have that logical valve underneath the tubing parts. All right. Let's go to our reducer. And you have to make sure, I forgot to save this, and you can't add it to the catalog unless it's saved. So I got to make sure that those are saved before you add them. So now just insert an existing object and go back to that, pick on the reducer, give it a couple seconds, and now I've got the reducer added to the tubing parts catalog. All right, next we're going to need to make a schematic, and we'll start by creating what's called a logical reference. So you'll see our RFLP. This will be the first time you'll see the RFLP stuff. All right, so over on the left, you'll see our logical reference, and then we have a main view there. We're going to go to the Addition tab here and insert a new view. I'm sorry, a sheet. We got to do the sheet before the view. So put the sheet in there. Pick out what sheet size it is. So ANSI D size. So there we got a sheet. Now that I have a sheet, now I can create a view. So insert a view. So just a new user view and name it and hit OK. So expand that out. There's the view. If I double click on it, now you can see it looks kind of like a sheet. And we're going to go to our catalog. And I need to change the catalog to our hydraulic diagram catalog. So make sure you're always on the right catalog. And I've gone and added in a pump and some tanks to the equipment catalog, kind of behind the scenes. So there's our tank. Put in another tank. This one I need to flip, so if I select it after it's placed, I can rotate it, mirror it, flip it, whatever I need to do to put it in there. All right, now that that's done, I can kind of rearrange it a little bit. Then I'm going to double click on a logical pipe, and it's going to be a new line ID. And I'm just going to use a 4-inch pipe, and we'll just go from one port to another port. Then we'll do another one. This is going to be a new line ID. It's going from 2 other new pieces of equipment. So we'll go out the pump and into the tank. And there we go. You can see I've also created some check valves, gate valves, things like that. And so they're real easy. You just kind of drag and drop them on. So drag and drop those. Make sure that the line ID is kind of highlighted in red when you drop it. If it's not, then you missed, and it's not going to automatically break that line ID. All right, got to put a little piece of instrument in there. So that's looking pretty good. And we'll go ahead and add a strainer right before it goes into the pump. And that is in the right direction, so I'm good with that. So put in one more check valve, make sure stuff doesn't go back into the pump. And that's pretty much it. Save it. So the hard part is really the symbols and the libraries and stuff. The easy part is putting out the schematic. So on to the physical setup, and guess what? More tables. So you can see here, I'm reusing the standards and the nominal tables. But I need to create an in-style table and a rating table. And a part subtype table and a piping material table. And guess what? More tables. Get real crazy with more tables. There's actually, I've got a PDF file that lists most of them and their interactions between the different tables and which ones are totally needed. But most of them I'm gonna hit in here. All right, we're just going to say that we're done with the tables for the physical setup, and we do have specifications, same as in the logical, but of course, more tables. And if you're going to route with a specification, then you also need to have what are called filters. So here's a rigid pipe filter, and so you're probably asking, well, what does it do? Well, when you set the specification on a product, then you go to route in that product. It only shows you the nominal sizes or materials that are kind of pre-filtered. So in this case, there are only 3 options for 4-inch pipe sizes to choose from here. I've got a Schedule 40, Schedule 80, and a Schedule 160. So I don't see the entire group, I just see what I need to. Makes it easier to pick. And some of the tables are very large, and you can add filters to your specifications. So when you're looking through your catalog, it'll help you find the ones that you need quicker. So here you can see I've added filters for nominal size and angle to give me only a simple choice of 4 parts out of 96 total. So now that we have a specification with all of our tables and filters, I'm going to change my responsibility over to owner. and then change that in the data setup. So let's go run the data setup app. And I'm not going to use the COE one anymore, so we're going to unbind that. So people aren't going to have access to that anymore. And let's go under the piping tubing specification resources. You'll see I've got one there for piping spec. So let's edit it and see what I've got in here. You can see all the tables that I have set up for insulation, piping spec, standard, part, material, nominal size, all of that good stuff. And they're all set to the proper tables. So I've got this one, it's got a lot more stuff to it, a lot more resources. So just drag and drop that over to the CATIA collaborative space and save it. Once that's saved, again, close out of that. Make sure you switch back over to the leader role, and we are good to go. So next, let's get to some of the fun stuff, which is the 3D. And we'll start off by creating some catalogs, put in some pipes, elbows, and some equipment. So let's start off with catalogs. So we'll create some new content, and we'll make a catalog. And if some of these are hard to find, you do have a little filter at the bottom, so you can just type in catalog, hit enter, and then there's catalog, so I'm going to start that. And we'll go ahead and name the catalog. We'll just call it ANSI pipe. Say OK. And then just like we did for a logical catalog, you can just go ahead and right-click, insert a new chapter, and rename the chapter. So we'll call this caps. Give that a couple seconds. And then we'll kind of do the same thing. Make sure that you have the top level pre-selected. Add in a new chapter. Call this crosses. Let's go ahead and do this a couple more times. So this one's going to be for elbows. And then maybe underneath the elbows, we have 45, 90 degree elbows, things like that. So let's make a subcategory. And again, it's just a way to help you find these parts a little quicker, a little faster. So I've got one for 90, got one for 45. That's looking pretty good. All right, of course, have to have one for pipes. And then I'm going to speed this up real quick, do some flanges, gaskets, OLEDs, reducers, T's, valves, and underneath the valves we may have some subcategories here as well. So weld neck valve or flanges, socket weld flanges, blind flanges, etc. So now that the catalog is done, we need to set up some pipes. So for the physical setup on the pipes, we have to start off with our pipe reference dimension table. And then with that, we can create a rigid pipe part. So it's a 3D part. And then we're going to feed in that table to its design table. And then with that design table and the 3D part, we're going to make it a family. And then with the family, once we create all the components of the family, we're going to go ahead and feed all those into the newly created catalog. And we'll tell it where to place it in that catalog. All right, so here you can see our pipe reference dimension table. And it's built up a lot with subtables. So we're going to do some new content. And then we'll scroll down and find our piping rigid pipe, and then we'll pick the standard, and we'll pick the material, and that's pretty much about going to be it. We'll go ahead and say OK. All right, I'm going to change over to my piping and tubing 3D part design app, and I am going to fill in the Fluidic PLM cache. Then I'm going to go to my tools and go to the material browser. And I want all of these different configurations or family parts to be carbon steel. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. and we'll just apply it to the very top level of the part and hit the green check. And so now under the materials, I've got carbon steel there. Then we'll go into the Fluid Route Design tab and use Design Table from Technological Table. Then we'll just go over to our engineering specification and pick on our table. So now you can see I've got the pipe reference dimension table as a design table. All right, so we just got to save it. We're going to go ahead and say component family and go ahead and call it ANSI pipe. And notice that it's already got that design table selected in there. If it doesn't, then you know you've done something wrong. You need to go back in and fix it. Okay, so now we're using that pipe. It's using those dimensions. We do have to map some of the attributes, so we're going to use attribute management. So we'll just pick on standard, make it standard, make material equal to material, nominal size to nominal size. So that way it's getting that information out of the design table and pushing it to the family parts. All right, so we'll save that. Once that's saved, then we can test and resolve the family items. So we'll execute that. And this actually takes a lot of time. And it says it was 4 minutes or something, but it was more like 16 to 17 minutes. It actually took a long time for it to create that. And you can see it's actually creating each of the different sizes. You can see the geometry actually changing in the viewer. All right, and then once it's done, then we can close that. It's looking pretty good. I can double click some of these just to see what the size looks like. Make sure that everything's green. All right, and with that, we want to populate a catalog. So I need to select the catalog. So let's go search for our ANSI pipe catalog. And then with that, we have different chapters. So I can pick which chapter I want to put it in. So in this case, it's just going to be under the pipe. And then what do we want to be able to search for or filter by? So those are going to be my selected keywords. So I'll make sure those are set up right, and then go ahead and fill the chapter. It's just going to copy all those and put them into the catalog. All right, and if we go look for the catalog, just do a quick search, find my ANSI pipe. Let's do a quick explore on it. And if we open that up and look under pipes, then now you can see that we've got each of the different sizes of the pipe. And again, those are fed in by the table. And we're good to go. Now, moving on to elbows, there's a couple rules to follow. On these guys, you need to be symmetric about the YZ plane. Ports 1 and 2 are collinear. So you'll kind of see that I've got, if it goes 90 degrees, then you'll only have a port 1 and a port 3. If they're straight across or coupling or something like that, it's going to be a port 1 or a port 2, which is fine. And then you'll see like a T, it's going to have a port 1 and port 2, which are straight across, and then port 3 is up 90 degrees from those. I've got a couple examples. I've got an elbow, a butt weld reducing T, socket weld union, and then a butt weld eccentric reducer. So the only tricky thing on the eccentric reducers is you need to make sure that the eccentricity is towards the negative Y direction off of your origin. And with those in place, then you can set up your elbows and be good to go. All right, so now let's take a look at some pumps. So I've got my catalog open. So you can see I've got a pump and some tanks. So I'm going to do an import, and I've gone ahead and downloaded a SolidWorks part file. So I'm just going to select on that file and hit OK. And it's going to convert the data, and then once it converts it, it has to actually save it up to the platform. So there we go. So we'll click OK out of that report. And then I need to create some planes to orient the ports. So I'm going to go ahead and use some of the origin planes here, so we'll go ahead and turn those on. So there they are. And then I'm going to double click on the shape. So we're active in that. Now I can create a plane. And off of this plane, I'm going to go ahead and say parallel through a point. So the reference plane is going to be my parallel to, and then the point, I'm going to go ahead and right click, insert wireframe, create point. And then I'm going to create this off of that circular edge. So pick on that edge, and now I've got a point placed off of that. Then it creates my plane, so that's good. I'm going to do the exact same thing using the same port, or using the same point, except it's going to be 90 degrees. And then I've got to do that for the discharge here as well. So the alignment and the other plane. Next, I'm going to say manage ports and add a port. And I'm just going to select on that point, select on the alignment plane and the orientation plane. And then the name is just port 1. So I'm going to do the same thing for the discharge port. And this one's 90 degrees. I'll just call it port 3 for fun. And there we go. All right, so next, after the ports are created, I need to go to the port attributes. So I'm going to tell port 1 is going to be a standard ANSI. Then I can pick the nominal size. These are all coming from those tables: the in style, the rating, the thickness, and the outside diameter. And then, of course, the flow direction. I'm going to leave it in and out for right now, but I should have actually an in for one and an out for the other. We can change that later. All right, so do that for the second port too. Then, of course, I'm going to turn all these planes off, just so when I put it into the product or the assembly, it doesn't have all the planes on. All right, with that, we're going to save it. And then next, I need to add it to the catalog. So we'll go over to the catalog, and I'll just right-click on pumps, say Insert from Existing Object, and then I'll just select over to my ACE pump and select it at the very top level. Give it a couple seconds, and it's going to add that pump. So now I have 2 pumps under my pump folder there in my catalog. And that's it. So now we'll take a look at the physical setup of this tank or exchanger. And we're also going to import this tank. It's going to be a step file. So we'll just browse for it, hit open, say OK. And then it will convert it and, of course, save it to the cloud. And we'll just say OK out of the reports there. And these planes, let's go and turn them on. They actually look pretty good. It looks like they're going straight through the center of the part. So I won't have to create any planes on this one. So we're just going to go right into managing ports, and we're going to add a port. And we've got 2 6-inch ports and 2 4-inch ports. So we'll just add those. We can pick on the top face for the orientation or the alignment, and then the plane for the orientation. There we go. So there's the 2 6-inch. So now we'll do the 2 4-inch. So 1 and 2 is going to be the 6-inch, 3 and 4 is going to be the 4-inch. All right, with the ports created, now we need to go into the port attributes. So again, port 1 and port 2 are going to be the 6-inch, so it's ANSI 6-inch, raised face in style. It's just schedule 40. And then we'll tell it the wall thickness and in and out. So we'll do the same thing for port 2. And then port 3 is going to be our 4-inch. It's also going to be a raised face flange. And same thing on port 4. All right, and that's pretty much it. So the naming came in with the step file, so let's go and just add COE to the beginning of that, and then we'll just copy that and paste it. And then we'll save it. And then once it's saved, I probably should have left the catalog open, but let's go search for the catalog real quick. So we'll explore that. You explore catalogs, not open them. And so I'm going to add this under my tanks chapter there. So I'm going to insert an existing object, and then I'll just go browse over, find that, select on the top level, and it's now added to my catalog. And that's it. So now that all the hard stuff is done, the catalogs and tables and all that stuff, we get to go to the fun stuff, which is placing the equipment and routing the pipes. So here we are in our logical reference and our schematic. So I'll collapse that, and I'm going to right click and say insert new product on the physical, and then just select on the physical product. It's going to put an assembly at the very top level of that physical. So I'll just name that COE plant, and there it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and create we don't have a lot of time to create the relations, but I do want to show creating one relation between the top level of the plant with the logical reference. So next I'm just going to place a part. I'm going to go ahead and place it just out in space. So just pick a point. And then I'm going to place this off of our catalog. So I'm going to go browse the catalog. And then I have the wrong catalog, so I'm going to go change that. So I'll pick on the equipment catalog. And you'll see all our catalogs change. So I'm just going to pick on that exchanger, that tank that we put in there earlier. And then we're going to do the exact same thing, except this time we're going to put in a pump. So we'll go to the pumps, place that. That looks good. We'll go ahead and put in one more. We're going to put in a tank. This tank is actually really cool. I didn't show it, but it's actually using a template. And with the template, you can actually change the parameters on the fly. So I can change the diameter or the height of the individual ports. In this case, there's a port on the left and port on the right. And then we'll use the compass to kind of drag these around and place them. We'll rotate that one. Just kind of put it in where it needs to be. Rotate that guy up. And then we get to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is place the weld neck flanges onto the ports. So we'll pick on the individual ports, go to our catalog, pick on where you're doing weld neck flanges. And all of these are going to be 4-inch pipes. So kind of same thing. Each of them have ports, and the ports know the orientation of that part. And in this case, we're putting, double weld neck flanges on there. There we go. So that looks good. Same thing, this tank actually has 2 ports. Again, one to the left, one to the right. So we're going to place one on the left part of the port. And then we'll double that one up as well. All right, now that we got our weld neck flanges, now the fun part is actually routing. So we'll say create route. So we have different schedules of pipe, 40, 80, and 160. So we're going to do schedule 40. And then here we have different bend radiuses. So we're going to do short radius elbows. All right, and then it looks like everything came in like it should. So we'll say OK. And then now we just pick on the port that we want to start routing from. And then we just drag that out. Now, cool thing is when I pre-select that, I can select on a cylindrical face and it'll automatically align that. So to kind of do the same thing, pick on that blue, pick on the cylindrical face, and then it's aligned. So this one I need to drag on down, and I actually have the port that I want it to stop at. So I just pick on that and then pick out in the middle of nowhere, and now it's aligned exactly where it should be. All right, so we'll exit out of that route. We're going to create a new route. So same thing, just say OK, pick on the schedule. Everything looks good. We'll say OK. And then we'll select on that port, pull that out. That one needs to be aligned. So let me pick on the blue, pick on the cylindrical face, and now it's aligned. Now the height of this doesn't really matter, but that length does. So again, cylindrical face, drag that down, pick on the port, and now it's aligned. There are some other tools in here. So if I do want to change these, I can pick on the segments and manipulate them, move them, rotate them, all that good stuff. And that looks pretty good. So we'll exit out of the route, go ahead and place a part. And I want to place a part on a segment. And in this case, I'm going to pick on the strainer and pick on my schedule 40 strainer. So we'll just say OK. Orientation looks good on that one. So we'll go ahead and put a valve up here on this segment. We'll do a ball valve. And there's 57 ball valves, so I'm going to use the filter here. And I just want to tell it to get 4-inch. And so then now I only have 8 to select from, so I'll just pick on that one. And that looks good, so I'll commit it. All right, let's go ahead and put in 2 more components. And then I think you kind of get the gist of how this works. So in this case, we're going to do a check valve. And then I want to flip this one, so I'm going to do the little flip option there. And you can see everything's pretty much right at your fingertips when you put it in. So it makes it real easy. All right. And then once I got those components, I just need to put the weld neck flanges on the outside. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we are running a little short on time, so we're not going to get to the documentation or manufacturing part of this. But you can kind of see that putting these things in here, once you get the catalogs and everything, are really, really pretty cool, pretty easy.